Hi everyone. Every year, usually around April 1st, my friends over at the Mebsoy Institute give me a little something to help make a video. After all, their mission is to provide you the most educational bovine scatology on YouTube. This year, they really outdid themselves. They gave me a massive amount of these square carbide inserts that unfortunately I don't have a tool holder for. But that's okay. I'm a machinist, I'll just make one. So just to give you an idea of what the inserts look like, they're not this big, but this is for the camera. And they are perfectly square and have square sides. So this would be an SN type insert. The N meaning there's neutral relief angle on the side. Now because of that, that means that if I were to just keep this flat, then I would have a lot of rubbing happening right here and right there. So that means I actually have to cant it a little bit in order to make sure that this point would be the only part cutting. Let me show you how I'm going to achieve that. I have the material that I'm going to be making my tool holder out of mounted to a 1-2-3 block. And I'm using a small piece of the exact same material as a spacer over here so that these step clamps remain parallel to the block. I'm using a couple of the tapped holes that are in the block already as screw down points right here, and I have this set at a 15-degree angle. To set the angle, I used one of these fellas, which is a little magnetic angle and center finder. I can stick that directly to my piece and then put my 1-2-3 block down against my surface plate, and the needle will show me the angle. In addition to this 15-degree angle, I'm also going to be holding the 1-2-3 block in the vise at about a 5-degree angle to make sure that I get a little bit of relief right here, and I'll square up the ends, cut my pocket, everything like that. The overall effect will be a pocket roughly right there, and when I square up these sides while the part is held at an angle, I'll end up with relief cuts on both the sides and the end. Let's get cracking. Like I said, I'm setting this up at a 5-degree angle in the vise, and I'm doing that with an angle block set on top of a parallel. The real hero in this setup is the 1-2-3 block. It provides a perfect platform for jobs like this that would otherwise be tricky to hold or require multiple setups. They have so many uses beyond just blocking parts off the mill table. You just have to use your imagination. Once I had it set up, the first order of business was to face off the top of my future tool. There's nothing terribly critical about this. I was just trying to clean up the whole surface. In fact, besides the dimensions of the pocket, there really aren't any critical dimensions on this whatsoever. That said, if I were making this for a CNC lathe, I would try my best to have the cutting edge of the insert end up on the center line of the lathe to minimize the need for shimming. Now that the top was faced off, I could move on to cutting the side and end relief angles. The angles themselves were determined by the position of the workpiece on the 1-2-3 block, so all I needed to do was make straight cuts in the X and Y directions. 'Twas at this point I began thinking that I really should have used a larger piece of material, because I'm not leaving much room for the insert pocket. No worries though, this piece will work for verifying the geometry, and if it works the way it should, I'll make it out of a bigger piece and a more suitable alloy. I'm using 1018 for this one, but I believe most commercially made tools are made from 4140 heat treated for some added toughness. I switched to a 1/4-inch end mill to rough in the pocket, and I started by touching off on the edges I just cut in the previous step. Then I moved in to just shy of my target dimension, which is not actually the size of the insert. That's because the insert needs to stick out a little bit from the sides so the tool shank doesn't contact the material. I can't have it sticking out too much though, because the cutting edge still needs to be supported. I settled on 20 thousandths or roughly 1/2 millimeter for the amount of stick out. As you can see, the radius in the corner is far too large, so I switched to a smaller end mill to finish up the sides of the pockets, and I'm also going to put a relief cut right in the corner. First, I needed to touch off on the bottom of the pocket, and I didn't want to mar my surface doing that, so I used some paper under my cutter, moving it back and forth as I slowly brought the knee up. Once the paper snags on the cutter, I know I'm the thickness of the paper above my part. I then machined the pocket to its final dimension, being very careful when I got to the corner where there was more material to remove. I also left 5/1000 or 0.013 millimeters for a very light climb cut just to improve the surface finish. Then I used the same end mill to plunge into the corner of the pocket to make room for the corner of the insert. Next I needed to drill and tap the hole for the insert screw, which is M4 by 0.7. I started with a 90-degree spot drill. This allowed me to drill deep enough that I ended up with a chamfer on the edge of the finished hole before it even existed. It also saved me a tool change by not having to chamfer the hole after drilling. The hole location is actually not in the exact center of the pocket. It's offset slightly toward the corner of the pocket, so when the screw is tightened, it draws the insert against the sides for a more repeatable location. I'm not sure how much commercially made holders offset the hole, but I offset mine by 0.5 You don't want to make it a large amount because you don't want to potentially break the screw when tightening it. All the machining is now done, so I'm going to take it out and bring it over to the deburring wheel to knock off all the sharp edges. If you've never used one of these wheels, you should definitely give them a try. They can be pretty aggressive in softer materials, so start with a light touch. You can always add more pressure once you get a feel for how fast it cuts. Now, let's take this tool for a spin. Alright, I'm starting off nice and easy with some 1045 steel running at 300 SFM. Let me go ahead and touch off. Oh man, I chipped it. Well, it's a good thing I've got tons of extras. Happy April Fool's Day, everyone.